I'm so excited. I love this movie.
Ryan's, it's about to start.
Sorry. Hello, and welcome to the second episode of our podcast called The Real. This is the podcast in which every episode we get a movie recommendation from our teacher, Mr. Binder. We watch it, and we bring it back, and we discuss it. This week we asked for a horror movie, and we were given the 1986 film Aliens. This is the description. After floating in space for 57 years, Lieutenant Ripley's shuttle is found by a deep space salvage team. Upon arriving at LV-426, the Marines only find one survivor, a 9-year-old girl named Newt. But even these battle-hardened Marines, with all the latest weaponry, are no match for the hundreds of aliens that have invaded the colony.
Mm-hmm. And in case you know anything about film, and that sounds like a very familiar kind of storyline to you, yes, this is the sequel to Alien, which came out in 1979, I think.
I've no clue.
I think it was 1979, but I'm not 100% sure. Please don't hold me to that.
We were told that the sequel is actually better than the original, and that you don't have to watch the original to watch the sequel, which is good because I have not seen the original.
Yeah, I saw the original like with my dad at some point, like growing up, and I saw like what was going on, but I don't fully remember the plot. But I think it did work as a standalone film. Yeah. Like they kind of established like, oh, this is what happened, and then they got directly into it, which was good. It was directed by James Cameron, who also did Avatar, Titanic, Terminator. So great movies, and I went into this expecting a great movie, and I would say that I got a great movie. I thought this was really well done.
I would agree.
The story was pretty good. I just thought I enjoyed watching it, which was good.
I think everyone else would agree, too, because it was given a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Going into this, I'm really not a fan of horror films, and we asked for a horror movie, so I was kind of scared. It wasn't too scary, but there were some moments where I was like, ooh, I don't like this, I don't like this, but I actually did like it in the end. Pretty much every horror movie I've seen, which mainly I'm talking about the movie Hereditary, if you've seen it, absolutely hated it because I was like terrified the entire time and I didn't sleep afterwards. But I slept after this one, and by my measurements, that's a good movie.
Yeah, I was not gonna lie, I was a tiny bit disappointed that we got Aliens because I've never considered these movies to be too scary. I was expecting Binder to hit us with something like really intense, just for you.
Oh man!
Because I know how much you dislike horror movies, but I personally am a big fan of horror movies, and so I was really expecting something like, super intense. But I did enjoy this movie. I would probably classify it more as a thriller, like a sci-fi thriller, than a horror movie, but I can see where people would be uncomfortable and call it like a horror movie because there were some little aspects. So with that, with our opening thoughts, do you want to get into the plot a bit and talk about our thoughts about the plot?
So the movie starts off, also, but before we start, I want to say this is like surprisingly well done.
Oh, for sure.
Like for an 80s film, it looked great, I thought, which I wasn't expecting. My favorite movie, I really love sci-fi. My favorite movie is Back to the Future. And like that's not really known for the best special effects, I admit, but like this was like leaps above that. It like looked fantastic. But starting off, it's like as the description said, it starts off with Lieutenant Ripley. She's like in this cryo sleep in her ship, and then all of a sudden a robot like breaks the wall down with heats the wall, melts it down, and then like an extraction team like bursts in all in like hazard suits or whatever, and they find out that she's alive and they take her back to another ship.
Yeah, and so this ship was by the company that sent her on this mission in the first place, and they reveal when she wakes up that it's been 57 years since the events of the first movie. But since she was asleep the whole time in this stasis, as they call it, it feels like no time has passed for her. And so it feels like you can jump right back into the story without like, oh, there was this huge 57-year skip. Like, it wasn't too much of a change, which was good because then it can work as a standalone.
She was also frozen with a cat. I forget what the cat's name was.
I think it was Jason.
That cat's adorable.
That cat was so adorable. I was very happy about that. But then she left it.
Yeah.
which was unfortunate. I wanted to see more of Jason. I think that was his name.
I have no clue.
But yeah, then so she starts getting like debriefed on what has happened in the last 57 years, and she goes to this meeting with a bunch of like generals and stuff, and she basically tells them like, hey, these xenomorphs that we fought, like they are a threat. One of the people said that there were more eggs, so I think this is a bigger threat, and this is something that you need to investigate. And no one really believes her.
All these board guys are like, you're crazy, because they have like a colony of people living on this planet now that have been there for the whole 57 years, you know, and they haven't seen anything. But then all of a sudden,
then
they lose communication with
like,
the people in the colony.
The next day, after they call her basically crazy and tell her to just chill out, like they say, I think the moon colony was called like Hadley's Hope. It was called.
Okay.
When I was reading like the summary of it, it was called Hadley's Hope. Yeah, this moon colony loses contact, and it's the same colony that's on this planet that the first movie was based on. So all the xenomorphs are still there, as people who have seen the movie know. And so they start trying to contact this colony again, and they can't get any contact. And so they go to ask Ripley to help, and they ask her to come along on a mission to...
Specifically, it's a character named Burke asks her to come along, and he becomes pretty important later on.
Yeah, Burke will definitely be important. I have some thoughts about Burke.
Some thoughts, okay.
But yeah, she refuses to go because she's so like traumatized by what happened, but then she starts having nightmares about it, and she realizes like, oh, I can't just let these guys go without knowing what they're about to walk into.
And eventually she gives in and decides to go along with them.
Mm-hmm. On the one condition that they allow her to exterminate the xenomorphs completely so that this won't happen again. But she like needs the promise that they'll be able to exterminate
She said that
them.
up front. She said to kill them or she wasn't going along, because later on you find out that Burke actually wants to collect them as specimen and like sell them to be studied on or something.
Yeah.
Basically, he's just like greedy, and he's like only looking for money there, you know.
Yeah, he just wants to make money, so he's gonna try to sabotage her plan to kill all of them. But we'll get into more of that later. And so they send the crew on a ship to LV-246, and we start meeting like the whole crew. There's a bunch of guys there. I think there were 2 girls and then Ripley. And, you know, we just see sort of like they're waking up. They're all kind of ready for this mission, and they're all kind of buddy with each other.
Oh yeah, that the whole scene where you're meeting the crew is like so funny to me.
Yeah,
you know?
the one girl's just doing like full pull-ups right after waking up.
What was her name? Vasquez? Was that
Vasquez,
it?
yeah.
She's cool, by the way.
She
was
cool.
my favorite.
I really liked her.
The one thing I really liked, so like while they're traveling to this planet, they're like in a cryo sleep sort of thing, and then like their pods open up like all at the same time. They all start getting up, and it's this cool panning shot. And like the one sergeant, when he gets up and instantly cigar in the mouth.
And he was like just chewing on that the whole time that he was there. Yeah, I really liked that whole scene. And then they introduced Bishop, who it turns out, okay, so Bishop comes up to the table where they're all having dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And he like puts his hand down and pulls out a knife. And if you don't know what the knife game is, it's basically like you tap a knife on the table in between your fingers, and you go faster and faster in between each of your fingers, and you try not to hit your fingers or else you'll cut yourself.
And so he like puts his hand on top of another guy's hand that's there.
Yeah.
And he starts doing the knife game like with both their hands, and he's going like superhuman speed.
Yeah.
And eventually he sits down, and like he has like white blood because he like cut himself, I guess.
There's a little
he has
nick
white
on
blood.
his finger.
And Ripley like freaks out because this dude's a synthetic human, and apparently in the first movie a synthetic human like malfunctioned and it resulted in the death of a few people.
Yeah, in the first movie, one of the crew members was an android. I think that's the term for synthetic human or android. And one of the androids malfunctioned in the first movie, and that like almost killed Ripley. So she's very, very wary of Bishop, and she says like, stay away from me, just do your thing, I'll do mine, but we don't need to interact in order to kill this in order to kill these things. Like she's very wary of him, but I sort of had the feeling in my head like, oh, he's gonna be important later and he's gonna help out because that's horror movies kind of follow like a recipe, like all of them, like, oh, the guy who's really greedy is gonna end up getting karma. The guy who seems kind of skeevy is gonna end up being good. Like, so I was kind of like working this out in my head as I was watching it, but yeah. So next they get to the planet and they find that it's basically deserted. Like there's no one there. They can't find any of the colonists.
And when they go inside like the compound, there's like remnants of like a fight. There's like metal torn and like burned by acid everywhere. It's like pretty crazy actually.
Yeah. And then they go into this lab and they see like these jars, these huge jars on the table, and there's these things called face huggers inside. That's like the term for them. Most of them are dead, but 2 of them are still alive in these jars. So they're just like, oh, we're going to be wary of that. We're not going to touch them. Let's just get in and get out. And so they leave the lab and they start to hear noises, and then they see something like moving down the hallway, and something like darts across the hallway, and they start shooting at it, but they don't hit it. And it turns out to be this little girl named Newt, who I loved her. She was so great when she was like giving the guys thumbs up or like saluting them. She was just so cute. She helped, like she made the movie just
definitely
great. So they find Newt, and Ripley's motherly instincts
she's like instantly attached to this child because this child is like the last survivor of this colony.
Mm-hmm.
Like her parents, her friends, all like everybody she knew was killed by these aliens. And the same thing kind of happened to Ripley, you know, like these aliens like attacked her like in the past and took out her entire crew. So like instantly there's a connection between these 2 characters, and Ripley like basically tries to take care of her for the rest of the movie then.
Yeah, so Ripley ends up taking Newt back to the dropship while the rest of the crew goes deeper into the lab. And as the recovery crew sort of like they go deeper and deeper into this area, they find like this huge room with just like I don't even know how to describe it other than like xenomorph bits and like cocoons everywhere. They start finding like colonists and stuff who are
they were trapped,
and
they were like trapped inside of the walls and like the pillars that were like presumably made by these aliens. It's like kind of freaky looking, honestly.
Yeah, they're like wrapped up kind of like in jungle movies when like vines wrap around you. It kind of
it's
looked
that,
like the same
but
thing,
it looked like,
it was like
slimy stuff. Yeah, it was like nasty, honestly.
Yeah, and so they like walk up more and they see this one girl, like her face lights up and it doesn't light up, but she like springs to life basically inside of all these like wrappings and goo and stuff, and she like asks them to kill her because she's in pain, and then she starts screaming and like a xenomorph pops out of her chest because that's how they like grow.
Yeah, the face huggers, I think like what they do is they attach themselves to like a person's face, and they like, this is disgusting, but it like implants eggs in them, and then eventually the eggs like hatch and they like burst out the person's stomach. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And it looked disgusting because it looked great.
Yeah, it did look fantastic. I had to give them that. And so the recovery crew like blasts a flamethrower on it and kills this little alien.
Yeah, they were instructed not to use their guns because they were in like, what was it, like a nuclear plant type of thing, and if they were to shoot their guns at the wrong spot, they would blow something up and the entire planet would blow up. So they can't use their guns in this area, which doesn't really make sense to me because they're still using flamethrowers, which I think would be
and then they
just
use
as
guns
bad
later anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they flamethrower this alien kid that's like screeching whatever, and that sort of brings the adult xenomorphs over, and the adult like they start descending from the ceiling and stuff and coming through these webs of like gross slime and stuff, and they start attacking the crew, and a lot of them get killed in this.
Like most of the crew gets killed there.
I think I have 8 people remain out of, I don't remember how many were in the original crew, but it's Ripley, Newt, Burke, Bishop, Hicks, Hudson, Gorman, and Vasquez. they are all the people who remain of the crew. And then, so they all, like the remainders of the crew, go outside. They meet up with Ripley and everyone else who wasn't like in the initial attack crew. And they order the drop ship, which brought them to the planet, to like come pick them up because they need to get out of there.
I think it was 2 people were left on the dropship
Yeah.
to come pick them up eventually, and the dropship had landed somewhere on the planet, and so they call for this dropship, and there's like the woman piloting it, and then there's another guy. The other guy was like off the ship doing something, and as he comes back onto the ship, his hand touches a button, and there's slime on it, like there was in the Alien Den. You're like, oh, because you know what's going on. An alien got on the ship. And as the ship is like pulling up towards them, there's a scene where like the pilot is killed by the alien, and then the ship crashes in front of all these people. And I think it was Hudson. The whole time he's freaking out. He's like, "Oh, that's just great. What are we gonna do now, man?"
He was really funny because he was just fully like lost his composure
so
immediately.
Paranoid the entire time.
Yeah,
so
and he
funny.
was just like accusing everyone of being like, "You're gonna get us all killed," whatever.
Yeah.
But something that I liked about the scene, well, liked is a weird word, but about the scene where the dropship crashes is when the pilot's like looking around to see, like she hears a noise behind her, and so she looks around a bit, and you just get this full like super detailed look at the xenomorph. I think this was the first time that you got to see like the full like gross teeth and
the
stuff,
teeth are like,
and, like
nasty.
slimy.
It's like the way the teeth come out, it's just like a blank face, and then they like slowly like descend down from what like the chin is, and it's just like you can see the like all of its teeth at once, and they're like covered in like this gross slime stuff,
and like the growling and everything, and then you just see like a blood splatter, and then the ship
she
crashes.
like turns around with a pistol to try and shoot it, but then there's just blood splatter across the window of the ship, and then it eventually goes down in front of all these people.
Yeah, I think this was like the first clear look at the xenomorphs in this movie, and I thought it was a great way to introduce it. It looked so cool. Yeah, so after this, they go back into the colony, and they're like, oh, well, what do we do now? Because our ship's destroyed. And so they're just sort of spending the night in the colony, and Ripley, I forget how she finds this out, but she finds out that Burke, like, told the colonists to go look for these xenomorphs, and that's why they were all killed.
It was very, like, unplanned plot point. It just kind of cut, and she was like, I saw in the logs or whatever. It was kind of like there wasn't really anything but her saying that. But like you find out that Burke actually instructed the colonists to go check out this like ship that Ripley said all these alien eggs were on, and so I guess they did, and they were all killed because of it.
Yeah, and she is about to like tell the whole crew that he's the cause for all of this. But then Bishop comes in, and he says that the impact of the ship like knocked a bunch of things loose, and like the plant is gonna blow up basically
in 4 hours, I think it was.
Yeah, he said like 4 hours. So he makes a plan to go get another drop ship. I guess they like had another.
Yeah, there's a drop ship like on the planet already, I guess.
So he makes the plan to go get it, and the way that he does it is by pushing like this huge box through a pipe and pushing himself through a pipe.
Yeah, so they like weld a pipe open, and he like crawls through it.
Yeah, and they said it was like a super long pipe, like it would take him like 30 minutes to get through the pipe. And I'm not necessarily claustrophobic, but seeing people in pipes
it was like
is so uncomfortable.
It was a really
for me.
weird, like gross, like awkward shot too. It was just like in front of him, and he's just like his arms are like down to his side, and you see his shoulders like wiggling forward.
Yeah, it's so cramped. Just like every time I see like something like that, like in Shawshank Redemption, they do kind of the same thing where the shoulders like get stuck for a minute, and then they have to like wiggle the shoulders free or whatever. I'm not like, I don't get claustrophobic that easily, but just imagining myself in that situation gets like makes my hair stand up. But like so he goes off, and the rest of the crew just decide like, let's just go to sleep. When he gets back, he'll get back, and then we'll go. And so Ripley and Newt like sleep in the lab. And Ripley wakes up at one point and realizes that there's face huggers in the lab.
Oh yeah, so she like one of the other like soldier guys like gave her a gun to keep with her, and she goes and she sleeps in the lab with Newt. When she wakes up, she realizes she looks over and one of the containers that was holding one of the face huggers is on the floor.
Yeah.
And she realizes one of them's in there. And when they eventually get up, like, because they were sleeping on the ground for some reason,
Yeah.
they get up and her gun is locked outside in the other room.
Yeah. I also liked, I forgot to mention that scene where he gets, or she gives him the gun, or he gives her the gun. I think it was Hicks.
Yeah, Hicks. Yeah.
Hicks. And he says, like, this doesn't mean we're engaged, you know?
Well, and there's like a clear, like, love undertone thing,
Yeah,
which was, like, kind of
very-
strange, but.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was like love's always a good motivation in horror movies
Yeah.
because like, oh, you can't let this person die, which is good because then you have like something to fight for. But yeah. Yeah, so then she fights off, like the crew comes and helps her fight off these two face huggers and they kill them, and then she reveals to everyone like Burke was behind this. He wants us to bring xenomorphs back to Earth so he can sell them, and he was gonna like let the face huggers get us so that we would have the xenomorphs like inside of us and they wouldn't be able to tell when we brought him back, and then he would like kill us or whatever and let the xenomorphs, like he would sell the xenomorphs after that. And so basically the whole crew's like, oh, it's time to kill Burke, isn't it?
Everybody turns on Burke. It's great.
Yeah, everyone's kind of like instantly like, oh, why should we let him live at this
again,
point?
Hudson's like the comedy relief. He's like, you're done, buddy.
Yeah,
That's it.
you're done. That was good. Yeah, so they're all like, someone pulls out a gun and points it at Burke, and then the power goes off, and it like gets like the backup power, the red lights come on.
I think it was Ripley goes, they cut the power, saying like the aliens cut the power, and again Hudson's like, how could they cut the power? They're animals.
Yeah. Apparently the xenomorphs are really smart, and I'll talk about that a bit later because I had a very specific note about that later. But yeah, so then they're all standing in this lab and the power's gone off, except for like their handheld tools, and they have like a sensor that can tell them how close these xenomorphs are getting.
Yeah, it's like a motion detector.
And they're like watching it go from like 6 meters to 5 meters, and they're pointing it at a door.
Yeah, and they're like, they've like welded this door shut, and they're like prepared for them to break in, and they're all pointing guns at this door.
And then it hits like 4 meters.
Yeah, all
and
of a sudden
that's impossible because that's inside the room.
Yeah, that's inside the room. That's right in front of us.
And so then they all look up.
Look up in the ceiling, and it's just like ceiling tile
bursts open.
And the one guy, he's like, "Give me a flashlight." I think it was Hicks.
Yeah.
And he like lifts up the ceiling tile and he points his gun up there, and he looks up and he turns the flashlight on. And it's this really creepy shot of all the xenomorphs just like crawling towards them.
Yeah,
and it's
they're like rappelling on the pipes, and then they like drop into the room and start attacking everyone. Burke tries to like run, and he closes the door behind him, which would like kill everyone in the room. But then he ends up getting killed really quickly.
Yeah, he closes the door behind them, and they like he goes through 2 different doors, and when he gets through the second door, he gets killed, I think, by a xenomorph.
Yeah.
But eventually they like weld their way out of the door, and they like go through a different path. But then I think, is that when they get stuck and then they start going through like the air ducts?
Yeah, they get stuck real quick. I just want to talk about like Burke's, like, it's fun to see villains get like instant karma in movies, because like obviously he's about to doom everyone to be killed by these things, and then turns around and there's one right in his face. I think that's just a really fun like cinematic choice. Yeah. But yeah, so then they start going through the air ducts because they need to get away from the xenomorphs, and I think they were like kind of cornered, so they go through the air ducts. Gorman and Vasquez,
they eventually get caught because
Vasquez got injured.
Yeah, because the xenomorphs, their blood is acidic apparently, and so
Yeah.
like if it touches you, your skin starts melting, and that happened to several of the people like earlier. But Vasquez is like fighting the one alien, and she gets blood on her ankle, and then she can't like move anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so who's the other guy?
Gorman, I think
Gorman.
it was.
Gorman comes back to like try and help her, and eventually they get cornered, and they're both out of ammo, and it's a really cool scene.
Yeah.
They're Vasquez is like they're sitting there. Vasquez pulls out like a little hand grenade, and she goes, "I always hated you," or something stupid
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
It was probably inappropriate. I probably can't say exactly what she said, but
No, yeah, that's the gist of it though.
Yeah.
Just like
And then
because they've
she-
been like at each other.
Yeah,
kind of the
yeah,
whole
it's
movie,
really
so
funny.
It was kind of a
the
good
the banter
ending.
between the crew is so funny throughout the entire thing.
Mhm.
And so then they blow both of themselves up with a bunch of the xenomorphs like closing in on them, and
And so that like gives Ripley and Hicks and Newt a chance to escape farther down into the
Yeah.
ducts. And then I forget how, but Newt like falls.
yeah, there for some reason like at the end of the ducts there was like a ladder going up, and there was like a little rotating like fan sort of thing.
Mhm.
And when the explosion goes off, the room is like shaken, and Newt falls down underneath this fan and into another duct.
Yeah, and she like slides down the duct and disappears, and she'll later get captured by an xenomorph.
Yeah. Just, were you gonna say animatronic?
No, I was gonna say animorph, but I don't know
Oh.
what that is. And then somehow Hicks gets injured.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't.
they were fighting another xenomorph, and like all these guys were wearing like body armor, and he gets some of the acid like on his chest.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And like the armor like kind of protects him, but not really, so he's kind of like a little bit out of commission for the rest of the movie then. But eventually, like before that happens, they find where Newt is, but they lose her because the xenomorphs get her. And when the xenomorphs find someone, most of the time they don't kill them right away. They take them back to that area that had all the slime on the walls and the people like in the walls to like turn them into hosts for more eggs.
Yeah.
And so eventually Ripley and Hicks, they get out and they meet up with
Bishop.
Bishop. They meet up with Bishop at
He-
the ship.
Yeah, he comes
pilots
back
the
with
ship
a
for
drop
them,
ship.
and they get on. And this whole time, Bishop has been keeping track of how long until the planet explodes.
Hmm.
And he says there's like, how long was it? It was like
I think
14 minutes. Or
I think
something.
it was like. I think it was 16 because I looked at the timestamp left on the movie and I was like, it would be really cool if they did like a real time 16 minutes, but I don't think they ended up
Yeah,
doing
I
that.
don't. No, but they
yeah.
like.
So Ripley's like, I'm not gonna leave Newt. She's definitely still alive. So she straps on like this huge gun.
Oh yeah, she
with
gets
like grenade
Yeah, it
launchers.
was a
and
really cool
fire
scene. She's
flamethrower.
like gearing up. She gets this gun and she gets a flamethrower, and she duct tapes the two together.
Yeah.
And then she gets a bunch of the hand grenades and she puts them on like a chest strap that she keeps with her.
Mhm.
And so she like adventures into the alien like nest, I guess you could call it, on her own because Hicks is in no condition to fight anymore,
Yeah.
and Bishop needs to like pilot the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So she like goes down, and it's a really really cool scene. She's like working her way through, and eventually she finds Newt, and the whole time she's battling all these xenomorphs and like flamethrowering them, and it's super cool looking.
Yeah.
Eventually she finds Newt, and they try to escape, and they stumble upon where like the xenomorph queen is.
Yeah, this was my favorite scene in the entire movie.
Yeah.
So she comes into like this really dark room with like blue light in the background just illuminating a bit, and you can see like outlines of eggs, like huge eggs that are the facehugger eggs. And she's just walking through the room carrying Newt, and all of a sudden you hear this low growling, and she turns around really slowly, and the whole turn like the growling's getting louder.
Yeah.
And like there's this squelching sound of like the
Oh.
goo or whatever.
Also, the sound design in this movie is
Oh,
really nice.
It was really good. But just the scene where she's turning was so good for me because I was like, this is how you build up intensity. And then you turn around and you see like eggs being dropped, and then it slowly keeps panning and you see the queen of the xenomorphs, and it's this
Yeah.
huge thing with like a huge head piece.
It's like, yeah, it's just so much bigger than the other ones, and it like its head is like longer at the back. It's like
Yeah.
really freaky looking, honestly, and it's like suspended on the ceiling above her.
Mm-hmm.
and there's kind of like this understanding between the Queen and Ripley, and like there's a bunch of other like smaller aliens like around, and there's this understanding that's like, oh, she just found the nest, and she has this flamethrower, and she has a grenade launcher and a gun,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, she could destroy this whole thing if she wanted to, and so none of them attack her,
Yeah.
and she starts backing up slowly, and you almost think she's just gonna leave and like let it be, but then she just full guns blazing
Yeah.
lights the entire place up.
And she the Queen was like giving birth to eggs. Like there was this big long
Yeah, it was really
tail.
gross. It
Yeah,
was really
it was
gross.
gross looking. But there was this really long, like clear-ish like tail coming out
That
of her.
you could like that was cool too because you could see like the eggs inside of it. It
you
was
could see
really
them like
awesome.
moving through.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Ripley like shoots it and disconnects the Queen from it, and that's when the Queen gets like really mad.
Yeah.
And so the Queen like screeches and starts chasing Ripley through this whole cave, and Ripley goes back. She has to go up an elevator to get back up to the platform where the dropship is. And so she goes up the elevator. There's still explosions going off because also everything's about to like explode. The whole colony's about to explode. So it's
the
getting
whole time
more and more
there's like a female like robot announcer voice coming on that's like 6 minutes to get to minimum safe distance. It's like
Yeah.
really like annoying.
Yeah,
it's really
like we
funny,
get
though.
it, lady.
Yeah.
This was the part that I laughed about because Ripley gets up to the platform with Newt and the dropship isn't there, and she's like, "Bishop, what are you doing to me?" Like she yells it out because she's
doesn't
annoyed.
trust him, you know,
Yeah.
because
Um,
established earlier in the movie she doesn't like trust androids because of what happened.
yeah.
But eventually the Queen is like there.
The Queen
The Queen comes up
she
the
goes
elevator.
up the elevator. How does she know how to use the elevator? I wrote that down 4 times in my notes. How does she know how to use the elevator? How? I need answers.
But yeah, the Queen like it's really like
The elevator just comes up so
it's such
slowly.
a suspenseful like
and
little
then
scene.
slowly opens.
The door opens and it's just the Queen of the
and I mean,
aliens. Man.
you like know that it's the Queen, but in the whole moment you're just like, how
Yeah,
did
yeah.
she know how to use
But it's
the
like
elevator?
it's super suspenseful as like outlandish as it is that
Yeah,
like the alien
yeah.
can use the elevator. But yeah, the Queen is like slowly walking towards Ripley and Newt, and it's like eventually like Ripley's like out of ammo completely, so
Yeah.
she can't fight back, and they're like up against a ledge that's
Mhm.
like just a straight up drop off, and she says to Newt, "Look the other way," because
Mhm.
she's like, "This alien's gonna kill us." But then Bishop,
the ship
the
just
ship
like rises
up behind them from
Yeah.
in this like big chasm, and like the staircase comes down from the side of the ship, and Ripley and Newt climb on, and eventually the ship takes off and they get away.
Yeah, and then like as they're flying away from the planet, the colony explodes, and you see like this big flash of light, and then they're kind of like, okay, like we made it, guys, everything's all right. And then I forget like how.
Then they like take the dropship back to the original ship they were
Oh,
on
yeah,
that like had like where the movie started, and they take the dropship, and it's like this big landing bay sort of area, and they park the dropship in there, and Bishop's like, "Oh, sorry I wasn't there, sorry if I scared you," because he said he didn't want to like sit on that platform that she was standing
yeah,
on
because it would have like
because it would have like
it would have
caved
broken,
and
yeah.
broken. But yeah, they get out there, and like Bishop and Ripley are talking, and then all of a sudden,
Oh yeah,
this was my favorite part in the
Oh, it
entire movie.
was?
It was
Oh,
awesome.
I
It was awesome. You see Bishop standing there, and if you remember, the aliens have acid blood, and there's just drops that fall on his shoulder, and you see like steam rising from his shoulder. It's
Yeah.
the acid blood. And then all of a sudden, the alien queen
I think
like attached, like held onto the ship as they were flying.
yeah,
It has a super long like spiky tail.
yeah.
It just fully impales him and then
Yeah.
picks him up. It's like really like grotesque, and the only way they got away with it is because he was an android, not
Yeah,
an actual
I was
human.
I
So
was
the
sitting
special
there.
effects,
I kind
like,
of forgot that he was an android, so I was like, "How is he still alive?"
Yeah,
but
yeah.
she like raises him above the head and like
she
rips him fully in half.
It
There's
was
a huge spray of like
Oh my
white
God.
goo that's
Yeah.
supposed to be his blood. I mean, I get why they made him an android, because they can't do like that.
Yeah, they
big of a
can't do that with a
blood
person, or else it's like
smear.
that
Yeah.
movie is not gonna get released.
And then like she throws the top half of Bishop over. He's still alive.
yeah, he's still alive, which
but
is
you can
kind of
like
crazy.
see, you can see like his organs like coming out of the
But they're
bottom
not
of
really
his
organs;
body.
they're like pipes
Yeah,
or whatever.
you can like very well tell that they're fake because
Yeah.
they couldn't put that in
Yeah.
the movie at the time. And he's just kind of like sitting there, and then Ripley tells Newt to run, so Newt runs, and then Ripley goes and locks herself in like a garage kind
Yeah.
of. But what she's actually doing is getting into an exosuit, which this is probably like the most famous shot from this movie is her like in the exosuit, which is, for people who don't know, it's like a huge mechanical suit that's used to like kind of like a forklift
Yeah.
to just like lift heavy
Yeah.
things. So Ripley like pushes the
She
button.
used
and,
one
like,
earlier in the movie. She like asked like the sergeant or whatever like if
Yeah.
there was anything she could do while like the soldiers were preparing, and she was like, "Oh, I can pilot this thing," and it's like the big mech suit thing. So it's kind of like a little bit of foreshadowing, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, and so she like pushes a button and the garage door thing lifts again, and she's like in this huge suit.
It's like it's
and
such a cool
she and
shot.
she and the queen like start to go at it. Like the queen throws herself on top of her.
And they
and-
start just like rock'em sock'em robots fighting each other, and Ripley's like knocking her around into like boxes and stuff. It's such a cool scene.
Yeah, and then the two of them like grab each other and like fall over the side into like this pit.
Which is like an airlock.
Which is an airlock,
Yeah.
so if it opens, like they're gonna be blasted out into space. And Ripley like crawls out of the exosuit
yeah,
and
'cause
hits.
when they fell, the exosuit landed on top of the alien queen, so she couldn't really move.
Yeah,
And so there's like a ladder on the side of this pit that Ripley starts climbing up, and about halfway up, there's a lever to open the airlock.
yeah,
And so Ripley's trying to get to this, but the whole time the alien queen, her tail is still free, so she's like swinging at Ripley's like ankles and stuff, and it's like
Mhm.
really suspenseful. And eventually Ripley gets it, and she pulls the lever for the airlock, and the alien queen like tries to hold on, and Ripley like has her arm around the ladder rung,
yeah.
like trying not to be blasted out into outer space.
hmm
And the alien is sucked out along with the mech suit, and it's like that's that. And then Ripley, this part was kind of stupid. I admit, she like climbs the rest of the way up the ladder to pull another lever at the top. Why doesn't she just flip the lever she pulled earlier back to close the airlock? It's really weird.
Yeah, but I did think it was like cinematic to see her like struggling up the ladder and
Yeah.
like everything's flying out, papers are flying
And
everywhere.
as the
and as Bishop is just sitting
Bishop,
there like
the top half of Bishop's body,
like
which
nu-
is still alive,
Yeah.
is like he's like holding on to like I don't know, it was
something
like,
on the floor,
something
just
on
like
the
a
floor.
bar
He's
on
holding
the floor,
on,
and
so he
Newt,
doesn't fly out.
Newt
and Newt
goes flying and he like reaches
he
out and
grabs her with his
her.
other hand,
And it's
so
just like half of a
cool.
person like holding on to this child.
it's so cool.
It was really cool.
And so Ripley climbs back to the top. She pulls like a hatch and she closes the airlock.
Yeah. And then obviously Bishop's wounded, so they're like, okay, we're gonna just wrap Bishop up and
Yeah.
put him in the freezer so
And this
he
whole
can go back.
this
into
whole time
stasis.
Hicks is passed out in
Yeah,
the
Hicks was
dropship.
passed out. He did nothing
He
during
really
this last
didn't.
fight. Yeah, so Hicks and Bishop, they're both injured, so
Yeah.
they put them into the airlock, or not the airlock, the stasis freezers pretty much immediately. And then Ripley and Newt are just talking. And somewhere like in the middle of the movie, when Ripley was trying to get Newt to go to sleep, Newt was like, "Oh, I don't want to dream because my dreams are so scary." And Ripley was like, "You don't have to dream, just go to sleep." And then at the end, Newt's like, "Is it okay for me to dream now?"
Aw.
And Ripley's like, "Yeah." And I
It's
think
so
it is for me
cute.
too.
It's so cute.
It's so cute. And I think there was a part where Newt called Ripley mom.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I- Aw.
After she closed the airlock, Newt like got up and like Ripley and her hugged, and then Newt called her mom. Oh my god,
that was
It's
really
so adorable.
sweet. I just thought that was like a good ending.
yeah,
A very
And
sweet
then-
ending. Not too sweet, but like
yeah. And then
worth it.
their like pods close, and that's the end of the movie. Pretty much, credits roll.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what are your thoughts on this, Ryan?
My thoughts
as someone who doesn't necessarily like scary,
as
or
someone
gore,
who doesn't necessarily like scary stuff, I thought it was really good.
Mhm.
See, I didn't know how to think about it going into it. I think the fact that it was sci-fi kind of like helped me a little bit because like I do love sci-fi a lot. Sci-fi is my favorite genre. But yeah, I thought it was great. The aliens themselves were like kind of freaky looking, and there were a few spots that it was like suspenseful and it's like scary. But all in all, I thought it was great. It wasn't too scary. It wasn't like not scary at all, but I loved it. Everything about it was great. And usually gore, I hate more than the scary stuff, I think. And like there wasn't that much gore apart from Bishop getting ripped in half, which for some reason is my favorite part.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he's not a human makes that fine, which is kind of weird. But yeah, I love that movie. I give it like a 7 or 8 out of 10, I think.
Yeah, I think cinematically, especially considering that this was the 80s, this movie is fantastic. Like, this movie holds up today. Like
ahead of its time.
If you told me
honestly.
that this was made in 2010, I would believe you.
Yeah,
like, it
absolutely.
looks so good. And like, I mean, there was a bit of like sky animation that was weird,
Yeah,
but
and
other
there was,
than
like-
that, it was perfect.
There's some like lightning effects that weren't very
Oh
good.
yeah,
but,
the
like,
lightning effects.
But like apart from that, like it was great. Like
Other
the
than
set
that,
design was
the
fantastic.
explosions, everything looked so
the
realistic.
explosions and fire looked amazing.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they used.
They
real
probably
fire
actually,
because
yeah.
They didn't have that good of
Yeah.
effects back then. But yeah, the set design, everything, like the story, just everything was so good. And I usually think that like horror movie endings are cheesy or like whatever, but I thought this was really
was
good.
great,
This
yeah.
was
Definitely.
probably one of my new favorite thrillers. Like, I definitely would recommend this to people who want to watch a thriller that's not like too scary. Yeah, I would give this, I think, an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
I would definitely watch it again
great movie,
with
for sure,
someone
yeah.
else. And yeah.
Almost makes me like I think I want to watch like the rest of the series now.
Yeah,
too.
I think there's I think there's 3 or maybe there's more.
There's more. There's definitely more.
Yeah. Also, Sigourney Weaver is fantastic.
Oh, she's great. Yeah, I told my dad I was watching it. I said, yeah, I got to watch this movie for a podcast. And he asked me what. I said, Aliens. He was like, oh, Sigourney Weaver. So it was like, she was a great actress in this for sure.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And yeah, just Ripley as a character is cool. I always love seeing like really strong like women characters, especially in movies from like the 80s and earlier.
That's really ahead of its time too.
Yeah,
which is great to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to go watch the other ones too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, so overall, fantastic movie.
Fantastic,
Definitely recommend it. Thank you, Mr. Binder, for another great recommendation. And we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have any closing remarks?
Not sure. I don't know what genre we're gonna ask for next. I think one of these times we should specifically ask for a bad movie.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be really good.
Like
but,
the worst movie Binder's
the
ever
worst
seen.
movie he's ever seen would be an interesting one, I
Yeah,
think.
stay tuned for that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
we will see you next time then.
Thank you for listening.
Thank
I'm
you
Ryan.
for listening. I'm Meredith.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye.